The cursor hovered over my personal server profile for exactly 3 seconds before he clicked delete. Bradley Thorne did not even look at me when he did it. He just kept that smug grin plastered across his face while the confirmation dialogue flashed on his screen. "You do not own this code," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. The server icon blinked once, twice, then vanished. That was when everything went dark. Every monitor in the building flickered to black. The hum of servers in the next room stuttered, then died. Someone down the hall screamed. Bradley's face went from smug to ghost white in under 2 seconds. And me? I closed my laptop, slid it into my leather bag, and smiled. The whole corporate database had just erased itself. Before anyone could process what was happening, I was already standing, my messenger bag over my shoulder, walking toward the exit like I had just finished a regular Tuesday. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices overlapping, phones ringing, someone yelling about backup protocols. Bradley sat frozen at his desk, his mouse clicking frantically at a screen that showed nothing but an error message in brutal red text. I did not look back. "My name is Gavin Vance. I am 48 years old. I am the senior systems architect at Apex Health Tech, a mid-sized technology firm in Portland that specializes in database management for healthcare providers." 15 years I had given them. 15 years of late nights, weekend calls, and building something from the ground up that actually worked. My roots were not in Silicon Valley mansions or legacy tech money. I grew up in a split-level ranch in Hillsboro where my father fixed cars in the driveway and my mother managed the books for 3 local businesses on a kitchen table covered in receipts and coffee rings. They taught me 2 things. They taught me how to solve problems nobody else wanted to touch and how to remember what it felt like to need someone to give a damn. That second lesson mattered more than people think. Empathy is not weakness in technology. It is architecture. It is understanding that the code you write at 2 in the morning affects the nurse pulling a patient record at 2 in the afternoon. It is remembering that servers are not just metal boxes. They are infrastructure for human beings trying to do their jobs. Bradley Thorne never learned that lesson. He arrived on a rainy Monday in October carrying a titanium briefcase and wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. The executive team introduced him as our new director of technology operations, a title that apparently meant he supervised everything I had built without understanding any of it. He was 35 years old, and his resume sparkled with elite credentials. He had an engineering degree from a prestigious university, 3 years at a Bay Area startup that got acquired, and 2 years consulting for firms that paid obscene rates for mediocre advice. He possessed the confidence of someone who had never actually broken anything important enough to learn a lesson. I knew we were in trouble. During his first team meeting, "I have reviewed the current infrastructure," Bradley announced, not bothering with pleasantries or introductions. He pulled up a slide deck full of buzzwords and consulting frameworks that had nothing to do with our actual systems. "Frankly, what I am seeing is inefficiency, redundancy, and a lack of modern DevOps principles." He said DevOps principles like it was a magic spell that could solve all administrative challenges. Harvey Finch, one of our senior developers who was 50 years old, raised his hand. "The current architecture has 99.97% uptime over the past 5 years. The redundancy is intentional. Healthcare data cannot go down under any circumstances." Bradley's smile did not reach his eyes. "Uptime is fine," he said, "but efficiency matters more. We need to streamline, cut costs, and modernize the stack." I should have said something then. I should have pushed back. But 15 years in technology had taught me to pick my battles, and I figured Bradley would crash into reality soon enough on his own. I was right about the crash, but I was wrong about the timeline. During his first week, Bradley started scheduling optimization meetings, hour-long sessions where he would pontificate about cloud migrations and containerization while the rest of us tried not to check our phones. He loved the sound of his own voice, loved throwing around terms like paradigm shift and synergistic integration. The second week, he started making changes. They were small things at first, like adjusting monitoring thresholds without consulting anyone, reassigning support tickets based on what he thought was important rather than actual priority, and sending emails at 11 at night demanding status updates on projects that were already completed. By week 3, he had started targeting me specifically. It began with a meeting request. The subject line read infrastructure review of Gavin's projects. There was no agenda, no context, just a calendar invite for 4 in the afternoon on a Friday. It was the universal corporate time slot for conversations that were not going to be pleasant. I showed up prepared. I brought system documentation, performance metrics, and incident reports showing our long-term stability. Bradley sat behind his new desk. He had already redecorated the office with minimalist furniture and a standing desk he never actually used, with his laptop angled so I could not see the screen. "Gavin," he started, not bothering with small talk. "I have been digging into the server architecture, and I am concerned about what I am finding." "Concerned how?" I asked, setting my folders on his desk. He spun his laptop around. On the screen was a directory tree of our server infrastructure, with one folder highlighted in yellow. It was Raw Personal, my personal workspace. "Every developer has one of these directories," I explained, keeping my voice calm. "It is a place for scripts, tools, and automation that makes the job easier, but is not officially part of the production environment. Mine is more extensive than most because I have been here longer and built more tools to keep the infrastructure stable. But it is all documented in our internal database, and it was approved by the previous director of operations." Bradley tapped his fingers on his desk. "This folder is a security risk," he said. "Unaudited code sitting on company servers. For all I know, you could be running personal programs in here." The implication was clear. He wanted to frame my work as a liability. I looked him in the eyes. "That directory contains database maintenance scripts, automated backup verifications, and system health monitoring dashboard files. Most of those tools are integrated into our daily operations." Bradley held up a hand to cut me off. "I will need a full audit, detailed documentation of everything in that directory, a justification for why it needs to exist, and a migration plan for anything critical." It was classic corporate busywork. He wanted me to spend weeks documenting things that already worked perfectly, just to justify deleting them anyway. Over the next 2 weeks, I compiled the documentation. I sent him detailed reports. Every email I sent him bounced back with a brief, automated response that said "received, under review, we will discuss later." He never actually read them. Meanwhile, he was making bigger changes that threatened our stability. He fired Evelyn, our lead infrastructure support specialist, who had been with the company for 22 years. He replaced her with a cheap offshore contractor who had never worked in healthcare IT. He canceled our premium monitoring service subscription to cut costs, then acted surprised when we missed a minor database outage because nobody received the alert notifications. He pushed a code streamlining initiative that mostly involved deleting developer comments from code repositories because he claimed they cluttered the files. The team started losing people. Harvey Finch submitted his notice, followed by our database administrator, and then both of the junior developers who had just finished their onboarding process. I should have left too. My resume was strong, and I could have easily landed interviews at other technology firms in Portland. But there was something about abandoning the systems I had built over 15 years. These were systems that hospitals and clinics depended on to access patient records. It felt like walking away from a burning building. So I stayed, I documented, and I watched Bradley dismantle years of careful engineering work with the confidence of an amateur. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday in November. I was in the physical server room running a routine hardware inspection on our database clusters. The security door clicked open behind me and Bradley walked in, followed by 2 people wearing expensive suits. "Gavin," Bradley said, "these are auditors from our parent corporation. They are here to perform a security and compliance review of our servers." This was news to me. Nobody had mentioned a scheduled audit. "I scheduled it last week," Bradley said, though I knew he was lying because my email inbox was empty. One of the auditors stepped forward. "We need access to all server directories, including personal workspaces, to verify compliance with corporate data security standards." I unlocked the admin terminal and stepped aside. "Everything is documented," I said. The audit took 3 hours. They scanned every file, verified every access log, and examined every line of script in my personal directory. When they finished, the lead auditor nodded. Everything is clean, he told Bradley. No policy violations. Bradley's jaw tightened. He had been hoping the audit would give him the ammunition to fire me. After the auditors left, he cornered me in the hallway. Just because you passed the audit does not mean that directory stays. He sneered. It is non-standard, and I want it gone. Those tools are integrated into our production environment, I warned. Deleting them will break automated processes. Then migrate them to the official repositories, he snapped. They already are documented, I replied. You would know that if you had read the documentation I sent you. His face flushed with anger. I do not appreciate your attitude, Gavin. I am running a professional operation here. Either adapt to new management or find somewhere else to work. He walked away before I could reply. I went home that night and updated my professional profile, but before I could send out a single application, Bradley made his move. The email arrived at 6:47 in the morning on Friday. It was sent to the entire technology department and copied to the executive leadership team. The subject line read Urgent Infrastructure Modernization. The email stated that effective immediately, all personal directories on company servers would be decommissioned by 5 o'clock that afternoon. Any scripts or tools in personal directories had to be migrated, or they would be permanently deleted. No exceptions would be granted. My phone began buzzing immediately with text messages from the remaining staff. They were panicking. They had only 10 hours to migrate years of automation tools. Harvey Finch called me. He is trying to force you out, Harvey said. This entire policy is targeted at you. I know, I said. What are you going to do? I stared at my coffee, realizing this was the moment. You know what is actually running in your personal workspace, right? Harvey asked over the phone. I mean the automated stuff that is integrated. Of course, I said. The backup verification tools, the health monitoring, the automated maintenance scripts. No, Harvey said. I mean the database reconciliation script, the one that runs every single night. My stomach dropped. The database reconciliation script. I had written it 8 years ago when we migrated our systems from the old mainframe platform to the new server architecture. It checked database integrity between the legacy systems and the active production database. It had been running silently and perfectly every single night for 8 years. It was so reliable that everyone had forgotten it existed because it had never failed. Bradley does not know about that script, I said slowly. Does anyone? Harvey was quiet. The original migration documentation was archived long ago. The previous director who approved it retired 4 years ago, and the rest of the migration team has left the company. No, I do not think anyone else remembers. What happens if that script stops running? Harvey asked. I opened the code on my laptop. It was an elegant piece of software, checking database discrepancies and logging system details. Without it, the production database and the backup server would slowly drift apart. The backups would eventually become corrupted and useless. More importantly, the script maintained active, persistent connections to both the production and backup environments. If someone deleted the directory while the script was maintaining those active connections, the sudden disruption would trigger an emergency safety protocol. The database would shut down instantly to prevent data loss. It was an automated defense mechanism to protect patient medical records from corruption. I was not planning sabotage. I was planning compliance. Exact. Literal compliance with a directive. I spent the morning mapping out every utility in my directory. I created a 47-page document detailing every process, its dependencies, and the risks of sudden deletion. At 2 in the afternoon, Bradley sent another team email. The personal directory decommission deadline is 5 o'clock today. It read, I will verify compliance myself. Failure to comply will result in administrative deletion. I replied to his email, copying the executive leadership team. I confirmed that I was clearing my directory, but noted that several automated processes required configuration to migrate. I attached the 47-page document. I knew Bradley would never read it, but it was now officially recorded. By 4 o'clock, I had migrated the health dashboards and minor utilities to the official repository. But the database reconciliation script was too complex. It had security credentials tied to my directory structure. Migrating it properly required coordinating a maintenance window with the network team. At 4:55, I sent Bradley one final email. I reported that the directory was cleared, except for the reconciliation script, which needed additional configuration. I recommended scheduling a maintenance window next week. At 4:59, Bradley replied. No extensions. Delete everything now. I hovered my cursor over my personal directory, took a deep breath, and clicked delete. The directory vanished. At 5:03, Bradley appeared at my desk, his arms crossed. Personal directory cleared? He asked. Completely, I said. Good, he said, looking at his phone. I am running a verification scan. If I find anything left behind, we will discuss insubordination. I nodded and packed my laptop. Bradley frowned. Going somewhere? It is 5 o'clock on a Friday, I said. I am going home. We have an infrastructure review meeting at 5:30, he said. I sent the invite an hour ago. I have plans, I replied. This is not optional, Bradley said. Neither is my personal time, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. He stepped closer. You have been coasting for years, Gavin. You made yourself indispensable with custom tools, and you are upset that someone is holding you account. I looked at him. I think you are so desperate to prove you are worth your salary that you do not know the difference between optimization and destruction, I said. That was when the first monitor went dark. A workstation near us flickered, showing a database connection error. Then another screen went black, then another. Bradley's phone started ringing. The overhead lights flickered as the servers in the back room struggled. My phone buzzed with a message from our database administrator. The database is completely offline, it read. Bradley stared at his phone, the color draining from his face. What is happening? He muttered. He turned and ran toward the server room. I followed him, my bag over my shoulder, because I wanted to witness the fallout. The server room was in absolute chaos. Monitors were flashing red error messages. Owen Riggs, our lead database manager, was typing frantically, sweat dripping down his face. What happened? Bradley demanded, his voice cracking. The database reconciliation process crashed, Owen said without looking up. It triggered an emergency safety shutdown to prevent data corruption. I am trying to restart it, but the connections are blocked. How long to fix it? Bradley yelled. I do not know, Owen said. The reconciliation script has run perfectly for years. I do not understand why it suddenly failed. Owen stopped typing and turned to look at me. The realization hit him. The script, he whispered. It was in your personal directory. Bradley spun around to face me. What do you mean the database reconciliation script? Bradley demanded, his voice shaking with anger. The script that maintains data integrity between production and backup. Owen repeated, his face pale. Gavin wrote it years ago. It runs from his personal directory. Ran, I corrected. The directory was deleted at 5 o'clock as you ordered. Bradley's face flushed red, then went white. You deleted critical production code without authorization, he shouted. I calmly pulled out my phone, opened my email app, and showed him the screen. I sent you 3 warnings about this script, explaining it needed careful migration, I said. You replied, and I quote, no extensions. Delete everything now. Bradley grabbed my phone, his hand trembling as he read the email chain. I did not know it was critical infrastructure, he yelled. It was in the documentation, I replied. Page 17, Section 4, Database Reconciliation and Integrity Maintenance. I cannot read 47 pages of technical documents in one afternoon, Bradley screamed. Then perhaps you should not have ordered the destruction of 15 years of infrastructure in one afternoon, I said. Bradley looked like he wanted to strike me. Fix it right now, he ordered. Restore the script and get the database online, or you are fired. I smiled. I cannot do that, Bradley. The directory was permanently deleted. The script is gone. Restoring it means rewriting the logic from scratch, reconfiguring database permissions, and rebuilding connection protocols. That is a week of work. We do not have a week. Bradley panicked. We have healthcare clients expecting 24-hour access to patient records. I adjusted my bag. Then I suggest you contact corporate leadership and explain why the system is down. You are not leaving, Bradley shouted. You caused this mess. I looked him dead in the eyes. You caused this mess when you ordered me to delete infrastructure without planning. I followed your written directive, which you sent to executive leadership. I should explain something here, Bradley, I continued, my voice cold and steady. I did not just write that reconciliation script for the company. The core synchronization algorithm inside that script was developed by me, at home, before I ever joined Apex Health Tech. Under federal copyright law, specifically 17 U.S. See Section 106, I hold exclusive copyright ownership of that algorithm. The company had a limited, royalty-free license to run it, which was tied specifically to my personal server directory. By ordering the permanent deletion of that directory, you effectively terminated that license. If you attempt to rebuild, reverse engineer, or run my copyrighted algorithm without my express consent, you will be committing a federal copyright infringement. Bradley laughed nervously. That is ridiculous. You wrote it while working here. No, I did not, I said, pulling a copy of my original copyright registration certificate from my folder. I registered it years before I joined. The license was non-transferable. Furthermore, there is another issue you need to consider. I spent yesterday reviewing our corporate archives. I discovered a technology transfer agreement dated 3 years ago, claiming I had transferred all intellectual property rights of the algorithm to Apex Health Tech. The only problem is, I never signed that document. The signature at the bottom is a forgery. Bradley's eyes widened and he took a step back. I do not know what you are talking about, he stammered. I think you do, I said. You were the one who submitted that agreement to corporate during your onboarding audit to prove you had cleaned up our licensing risks. You forged my signature to look good to executive leadership. Under California Penal Code Section 470, forging a signature on a legal contract is a felony. In addition, under established legal doctrine, any contract containing a forged signature is void ab initio. It is void from the beginning. It has no legal force. I let that sink in for a moment. Owen was staring at Bradley in absolute shock. By forging my signature to cover your tracking errors, you committed elder financial abuse and forgery, and you violated your fiduciary duty to the company, I said. You exposed Apex Health Tech to massive federal copyright liability and criminal prosecution. That is a breach of fiduciary duty that will cost you your career, and potentially your freedom. Bradley looked like he was going to vomit. His phone rang again. It was the vice president. He declined the call, his hand shaking uncontrollably. What do you want? He whispered. I want a written agreement before I write a single line of code, I said. I will return only as an independent consultant. My rate is $250 an hour, and the company will pay me $15,000 a month to license my algorithm. And you will sign a document acknowledging your actions. Bradley stared at the documentation, his breathing shallow. He knew he was trapped. The threat of a federal copyright lawsuit combined with a criminal forgery charge under the state penal code left him with zero leverage. His phone rang again, and this time, the name Diane Caldwell flashed on the screen. She was our senior vice president of operations. Bradley answered with a trembling voice, putting it on speaker as I demanded. Bradley, what is the status? Diane's voice boomed through the phone. We are receiving emergency notifications from 3 hospital networks. The patient record databases are completely unresponsive. Bradley looked at me, pleading with his eyes. Gavin is here, he stammered. We are discussing the restoration plan. Let me speak to him, Diane ordered. I took the phone. Diane, this is Gavin Vance, I said calmly. The database collapsed because Bradley ordered the immediate deletion of my personal directory, which contained the active reconciliation script. More importantly, the script utilized an algorithm to which I hold exclusive copyright under federal law. The company's license to use it was terminated when my workspace was deleted. Furthermore, I have discovered a forged technology transfer agreement in our archives that purports to transfer my intellectual property rights. This forgery violates the state penal code and renders the agreement void from the beginning. Diane was silent for a long moment. She was an experienced executive who understood liability. Gavin, what does it take to get the systems online? She asked, bypassing Bradley entirely. I need a consulting contract, I said. My rate is $250 an hour to restore the databases. I also require a licensing agreement of $15,000 a month for the use of my reconciliation algorithm. Finally, I want a written statement from the company acknowledging that this outage was the direct result of Bradley's operations directive and that my actions were in full compliance with company orders. We will agree to those terms, Diane said without hesitation. The hospitals are losing thousands of dollars every hour, and patient safety is at risk. I will have legal draft the contract and send it to your email in 10 minutes. As for Bradley, he is suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation into the forgery. Owen, you will witness Bradley signing a confession of his actions before he is escorted from the building. Bradley did not argue. He signed the statement. Owen printed out, his hands shaking so much the ink smeared. He packed his belongings into his titanium briefcase and was escorted out by building security. He went from director of technology operations to a disgraced former employee facing potential criminal charges for forgery and breach of fiduciary duty in less than 1 hour. Once he was gone, I opened my laptop and went to work. Owen helped me set up a clean, isolated environment on the production server. We worked through Friday night and all of Saturday, sleeping in shifts on the break room couches and drinking terrible office coffee. I stabilized the database tables, repaired the corrupted transaction logs, and rebuilt the reconciliation logic from my secure local backup files. By Sunday afternoon, the production databases were fully functional. The hospital networks reported normal access to patient records, and the sync monitoring dashboard was showing green status indicators across the board. On Monday morning, Diane Caldwell met me in the server room. She handed me the executed consulting contract and the first licensing payment. "You saved us, Gavin," she said. "The board has officially terminated Bradley for breach of fiduciary duty and contract forgery. We are cooperating with law enforcement regarding the forged documents." "I appreciate that, Diane," I said. "But as we agreed, I am submitting my formal 2-week resignation today. I will spend the next fortnight training Owen and Harvey Finch to manage the database infrastructure under the new licensing terms." My final 2 weeks at the company were peaceful. Without Bradley's toxic meetings and constant demands, the technology team breathed a sigh of relief. I documented every database procedure, created step-by-step guides for system recoveries, and ensured Owen and Harvey were fully prepared to handle any synchronization issues. On my last Friday, the team bought a large sheet cake and gathered in the break room to say goodbye. Harvey Finch, who had decided to stay a bit longer before retiring, shook my hand. "You handled that beautifully, Gavin," he said. "You followed orders, documented the warning, and let incompetent leadership destroy itself." "It was just compliance, Harvey," I smiled. "I did exactly what he ordered. I left the office at 5 o'clock on a Friday, exactly 15 years after I had first walked through the front doors. My building pass was returned, my access accounts were deactivated, and my copyright algorithm was running securely under a formal corporate license. 3 months later, I officially launched my own independent IT consulting firm, specializing in database architecture and intellectual property audits for healthcare companies. Within 6 months, I had more clients than I could manage on my own. A year after that, I hired my first full-time employee, Harvey Finch, who had finally left the corporate world behind. Now, whenever a prospective client tells me they want to delete undocumented server profiles to prove their authority, I send them a copy of my standard warning documentation. I explain the legal risks of copyright and fiduciary duty. If they choose to ignore my advice, I do not argue. I just follow their orders exactly as given. If this story hit home for you, please hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing but helps us build this community. We are moving toward our goal of 5,000 subscribers, and having you along for the journey makes all the difference. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.